And if you look back to the massacre, for instance, of close to 1 million people in Rwanda, that was instigated by just radio broadcasts, largely. Radio, this is just audio. Imagine what social media can do today with graphic videos and audios reaching exponentially increased numbers on numerous platforms. If you recall, during the xenophobic attacks on Nigerians in South Africa, fake videos of violence and destruction of property elsewhere, these were things taking place in India or somewhere, were passed off as videos of South Africans burning properties and businesses of Nigerians. This resulted, as some of us recall, in spontaneous destruction of South African-owned businesses in Nigeria. In the past 2 years, we've seen some of the more dramatic iterations of technology, especially AI-driven. So it's now possible to generate deep fakes, photos or videos showing individuals making statements that they never made or doing acts that they didn't do. Just, I think it was in March or June of 2022, a deep fake video surfaced which showed the Ukrainian president, President Zelensky, allegedly instructing Ukrainian soldiers to surrender to Russian forces. The video was very quickly debunked, but it raised concerns about the use of deep fakes in disinformation, especially during conflicts. Everyone pays a price for weaponization of technology. Everyone pays. Truth can be rubbished, while falsehoods and hate can be elevated. Almost everything can be put in doubt. So it might be important for responsible users to attempt to design ways of preventing the weaponization of social media, especially since government control would almost invariably defeat the new gains of free speech. And I think also this point was made earlier by the Honorable Commissioner for Innovation, Science and Tech. I think the point was made that if we don't find a way of self-regulating, and I think these are the hard duties that civil society must undertake. What are the ways of self-regulation? What are the types of social compacts or compacts that can be developed to self-regulate? Because government regulation almost invariably will mean that free speech will be impugned. Social media enables free speech writ large, as you know. That's what social media does. It is free speech at its largest expression or in its largest form. The anonymity of identity and the nuance of location, you can locate yourself anywhere, that social media creates is really empowering for all, and it is non-discriminatory. So the weak, the strong, the treacherous, the mischievous, anybody, haters of every kind, have cover to speak their minds, to speak truth to power, to misinform, to insult, to just say anything whatsoever. So I think that it's an important, critical medium, but we must find ways of self-regulation. Now, permit me to make two other general observations about political action in Africa. In developing countries, especially countries with fragile economies and widespread poverty, we do not have the luxury of political action for its own sake. We simply do not have the luxury of political action just for the sake of political action. There is a sense of power and excitement around protests, and of course anyone who has participated in a protest knows that good feeling one gets when one seems to be doing something good and helping your society. But political action must go beyond protest and the euphoria that it brings. It must lead to some measurable or tangible result. Otherwise, it becomes counterproductive. In poor societies, every day of protest is valuable because it means that the millions of informal workers and traders make a huge sacrifice because they earn on a daily basis. So it's important that there is good reason for the sacrifices that are made. So political action must lead somewhere. It must move a step closer to resolving the issues that cripple our societies. The role of the elite in political action is crucial. And when I say the elite in this room, I speak, of course, of civil society. The role is crucial. Usually, it is the elite that have the facilities to craft the objectives of political action or to clearly articulate the grievance and what would amount to success in the particular political action. They have the networks and the resources to build coalitions for political change, often leading to structural reforms, the type of political change that makes a real difference. Now, while a major advantage of technology and in particular social media in mobilizing protesters is that the coordination of action can take place without any apparent leadership. And we've seen that, on social media it's possible to organize without identifying any leadership at all, if there is no achievable end. Let me also make a related point. In a democratic society where the objective of political action is to make substantive or structural change, this may only be possible within the context of partisan politics. And I'm sure that there are many who may not agree with that. And I just repeat, democratic society, it may only be possible within the context of partisan politics. And I explain that. Yes, we can be effective as pressure groups, and some level of change is possible by our advocacy and action. But the truth is that for the depth and scale of change that is required in developing countries, political power is required. The purist stand of the elite, which of course includes many in civil society, that we should not get our hands dirty in politics, will not achieve change at the scale in any important areas of concern. And I'll just repeat that. If we take the position, don't get your hands dirty, don't get into politics, we cannot achieve change at the scale that is required, especially in our societies. The important areas of concern, of course, are possible. We can influence those areas if we participate actively. We must participate, even if it means taking a partisan stand. We must be involved somehow or the other. We complain, for instance, about political parties lacking ideology and political campaigns lacking policy substance. Who will change these dynamics? Surely it will be men and women like you and I, not spirits. It will be men and women. You and I are the ones who can change the direction of political parties. Those who establish political parties are men and women like you and I. If we want to change the way they sound, if we want to change the way they develop, whether the tone of debate, then we must participate. For many years, and I'll just share a very quick some quick personal experiences. For many years, I believed that it was possible to transform our Ministry of Justice to be more, and I speak of the Ministry of Justice here in Lagos State. I believed for many years that it was possible to transform the ministry to be more citizen-oriented and also to reform our administration of justice system. I strongly held that belief for many, many years. Teaching in the University of Lagos at the time, from 1981. This was one of the key issues. I talked all the time, wrote extensively about reform of the administration of justice system. I was part of several civil society organizations committed to these causes. We drew up various policies and blueprints. We made some progress, but it was not until the AD then won elections in Lagos State in 1999. The AD, of course, as you know, became AC, then ACN, and then APC eventually. But when the AD won elections here in Lagos in 1999, and I got a chance to be the Attorney General of the state, that working in partnership with the bar, the bench, and civil society, we were able to carry out some of the more far-reaching reforms of both the Ministry of Justice and the administration of justice system here in Lagos State. My experience in civil society was extremely useful. I and my organization, I had an organization then, which still exists now, called Integrity, it's now called the Convention on Business Integrity, had been Ford Foundation and MacArthur Foundation grantees. I was a Ford Foundation grantee as long ago as I believe 1993. And then later on, the organization Integrity, which I co-founded with Mr. Pampa, also became Ford and MacArthur grantees. Now, when I got into office as Attorney General, they immediately asked how they could help. And it was these two organizations that funded the early years of reform efforts in Lagos State, in our justice sector reform efforts, before budget funds kicked in. For almost 18 months, the funding that we had for the reform of our Ministry of Justice and the administration of justice system came from our grantors, mainly Ford and MacArthur. Ministry of Justice then, a new department to the traditional departments. In most ministries of justice, you have public prosecutor's office, you have civil litigations, etc. We introduced the Department of Citizens' Rights, the Citizens' Rights Department. Under that department were the Office of the Public Defender. Now, the Office of the Public Defender provided free legal assistance to people who couldn't afford legal services in both civil and criminal cases. Before then, the federal government had a legal aid. We pioneered, you couldn't afford the fees for whatever civil cause it was, whether it was a land matter, whatever it was. Lagos State government at the time, through the Office of the Public Defender, was able to provide those services. And then also we established something called the Citizens Mediation Centers. All of these, of course, still exist today, and they are much bigger than when they were founded. And in the Citizens Mediation Center, citizens could have small claim disputes resolved free of charge. So we had a lot of landlord and tenant cases. The magistrate courts at the time were doing about 2,000 cases a year. Once the Citizens Mediation Center started, they were able to do almost 8,000 cases, landlord and tenant cases in a year, almost 4 times what the magistrate courts were doing. And this, of course, were free for citizens. We also had a consumer protection unit. We were able to reform our civil and criminal procedures, appointments and discipline, and remuneration of judicial staff. And we were able to influence policy, especially around the appointment of female judges. 2/3 of our judges that were appointed then are female. Until today, I believe that at least half of judges in Lagos State are female. Also, I always believed, and this is fast forward to 2014, 2015. I always believed that this country could effectively provide a social safety net for the poor and the vulnerable. And again, I worked with so many people, so many organizations around so many of the ideas, social security, etc. But the opportunity only came in 2015. Before the campaigns in 2015, when I had no idea, of course, that I would be nominated as vice presidential candidate, Patutomi, and so some of us will know Patutomi, Wale Edun, who is the current current Minister for Finance and Coordination of the Economy, and later Mr. Tunde Erukera, who was the FCPC chair. All three of us, Wale, Patutomi, and I, and Mr. Erukera later on, wrote the social investment policy into the APC manifesto. Of course, none of us knew that we were going to play any role in actual elective politics at the time. And that policy included the homegrown school feeding program, the conditional cash transfer program, the government enterprise and empowerment program, and the Empower program. Now, because I got a chance to serve in government, these programs saw the light of day. Now, all three of us, I was the primary person who got appointed, who got elected into government. Assuming that this never happened, assuming that none of us ever got a chance in government, I doubt whether we would have been able to do anything whatsoever about the social investment policy, or that any of this will see the light of day. I had the privilege of chairing the implementation of our social investment program between 2016 and 2019 as vice president. And as of 2019, we were feeding 9.6 million children daily in 30 states at the time, and we're looking at going beyond that to 12 million. As I said, this was between 2016 and 2019. We were able to put several farmers to work, cooks to work. We had 500,000 graduates and non-graduates in the Empower scheme. We granted microcredit to 2.4 million informal traders. If I or Pat or Wale remained outside the partisan political space, I don't think these modest achievements would even have been possible. A second point that I'd like to make is that political action today must go beyond protest. We must see activities that directly catalyze development as important features of political action. And I want to emphasize that protests, of course, are crucial, they are important, but we must use our resources also for direct action that has development objectives. We can instigate official action in various ways. For example, intervening in important areas of human capital development, such as education or healthcare. So we identify a problem, out of school children, and we recognize that brick and mortar cannot cope with the number of children who are out of school today and who require basic education. In other words, we can't build enough schools. We're growing at 6 million people every single year, the size of Liberia every year, So we need to deal with this. Technology makes it possible for us to engage in mass education. The question is, how can technology deliver cutting-edge, affordable basic education? What is the role of AI in mass education? And there are several private tech-enabled initiatives that are focused on these challenges, disrupting long-held beliefs on education and how education should be delivered, and challenging public education authorities to adopt more dynamic, more relevant curricula. For example, there is a program called M-Shule in Kenya. It's an AI-powered mobile learning platform that delivers personalized education via SMS to primary school students in underserved areas. So they use their mobile phones at a time. And I remember when we started the social investment policy, people said, people in the rural areas, they don't have phones, they don't have this and that. But the vast majority of places we went, people had their phones. People had phones. And even where they didn't have phones, we were able to make phones available because there are so many cheap versions of these phones. So it is entirely possible to deliver education using mobile telephony and using many other different platforms. Today you have AI-driven STEM tools, such as AI-powered labs and simulations, allowing students to experiment with complex scientific concepts without expensive equipment. Basic education today, in my own view, must involve critical thinking and collaboration. Nobody is doing competition anymore. And for those who are in the tech space, you understand collaboration. And we must teach collaboration. We must deliberately teach collaboration as we teach critical thinking. Why? And one of the reasons why community action for development or even political expression is lacking is because of an educational curriculum that overemphasizes individual excellence and competition over collaboration and group or communal success. One of the reasons why we find it so difficult to work together to change our communities is because individual success is overemphasized. Competition, especially in the academic space, is overemphasized. Political action is weakened when people see individual success as more important than community or group success. Collaboration as a key in tech, in any type of technology, especially technology-enabled businesses or basic education, can really be a game changer. We can produce young men and women who understand the power and exponential benefits of united action. Collaborative AI for learning was developed by Mitsukola at the MIT. They developed this particular AI-enabled platform, which integrates different AI tools into classrooms to support collaborative group learning. Students interact with AI-powered conversational agents during group and work discussions, enhancing their collaborative skills. Education of girls is considered, in our country, for example, is a key issue, is a major problem that needs to be dealt with, and is a key objective of many of our educational policies. But then the question is, how effectively are we delivering? But there are tools for speedily achieving great results. There's a program called TeachFlow, which utilizes AI to promote gender equality in education by developing programs that address the unique challenges that are faced by girls, the education of girls, especially girls in rural and underserved areas. Their AI-driven platforms offer personalized learning experiences and resources tailored to the needs of female students, especially in environments where female students are restricted, or where young girls are restricted from interacting with other people. And of course, that helps to bridge that whole gender gap in education. And I'm sure that some of us are familiar with what UNICEF has developed, the digital platforms that UNICEF has developed. These are open source platforms that leverage AI to advance girls' education in particular and promote gender equality. These initiatives focus on providing inclusive and transformative digital technology to enhance girls' learning and skills development for work and life. So by utilizing AI, they can make education, they have made education more accessible and engaging for girls in underserved regions. So let me conclude by saying that technology has revolutionized political action by amplifying voices, mobilizing movements, and fostering transparency. However, we know the potential risks, disinformation, divisiveness, and these potential risks must be addressed responsibly. Political action should go beyond protests to achieve measurable reforms, with the elite playing a crucial role in shaping and sustaining change. Additionally, leveraging technology for developmental solutions in education, in healthcare, and governance can drive lasting progress. And I think that by using technology responsibly and innovatively, we can empower individuals, we can strengthen institutions, we can transform political action into a force for real development in Africa. And I'm sure that the conversations that we're going to have today are critical steps towards realizing this vision. And I hope that we all will be able to bring our own particular perspectives to some of these very important conversations that we'll be having today. So thank you all very much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Please wait on stage, sir. Please wait on stage. We want to take some pictures. So I'd like to have the Honorable Commissioner of Innovation, Science and Technology please join the former Vice President. We have a set of pictures to take, and we'll have some more of our dignitaries joining on stage. And also joining him is the Permanent Secretary, Office of Political, Legislative and Civic Education, Shola Shashore. I'd also like to welcome a gentleman who's joining us all the way from the Republic of South Africa, the Deputy Minister of Communications and Digital Transformation Technologies of the Republic of South Africa, Mr. Mondli Gungu Bele. Please welcome him. He's joining us from South Africa, and he's also coming on stage to be part of the pictures. Please, sir, join us on stage. Making the trip all the way from the Rainbow Nation to be here with us today in these conversations. And now I'd like to ask our speakers who will be participating in the plenary session to also join for pictures with His Excellency and other participants. Please, others joining the plenary session, please come up on stage for your pictures. All right, thank you so much. Thank you once again. Please a round of applause for His Excellency, the former Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you so much, Prof, for the words that he has shared today. We look forward to continuing the conversation as things move ahead. So just to let you know that a few more things are coming up. We'll have an opening plenary session, which will be coming up very shortly. We'll also be having a special spotlight session, which will look at 25 years of democracy in Nigeria in the Fourth Republic. There will also be 2 concurrent breakout sessions, one looking at technology and political action in Africa, present realities and future possibilities, as well as emerging technologies for enhanced governance of electoral integrity in Africa. So ladies and gentlemen, we're setting up for the plenary. Please just give us 1 or 2 minutes.
I am a citizen of Nigeria. I live and work in Nigeria. I believe in an open, transparent and accountable government. How you see am?
Now so millions budget padding. Well, it don't do.
see. Maybe government, president or senators get power. Now we the citizens, because now we the
awake. Engage your lawmakers. Sign petitions if needed.
Amplify the issue on social media. Anywhere and everywhere. Little drop of water makes a mighty ocean.
Remember, the office of the citizen is the highest office in the land.
Bam! Pepper soup!
I beg, make am 2 plates.
Yes, my people, you have the power to change what you don't want in your society. We are the ones with the power. Let us always speak up against injustice as active citizens. The office of the citizen is the highest office in the land. Natu Baba Dehiasu, and I endorse this message.
Nigeria has one of the most comprehensive human rights law regimes in the world, on paper. And that is the challenge I'm going to throw to all of you. Because if you do not know your rights, you cannot know how to fight for them. This country, this our country, under the Administration of Criminal Justice Act, no Nigerian, under the Constitution, no Nigerian shall be detained for more than 48 hours without being taken to court. If you are not going to be taken to court, the government must go to court to get an order to detain you. So you cannot be detained at the pleasure of the police or the army. 2, if you get to a police station in Nigeria, the police will tell you, must tell you now, these are your rights under the law. Number 1, you are entitled to contact your next of kin. If you do not have a phone there, the police will give you a phone and buy credit at the expense of the state. 3, no Nigerian shall be arrested for a civil wrong. Your landlord can never arrest you as a tenant because that is a civil wrong. No Nigerian can be arrested in respect of land matters. No Nigerian can be arrested in lieu of a criminal suspect. The question of, oh, we are looking for a father, we can't find the father, we arrest the son or the daughter. That belongs to the past. What are the other rights? You are not bound to make a statement in a police station. If you do not want to make a statement, you are not obliged. In a police station, before you answer any question, you are entitled to a lawyer of your choice. If you do not have a lawyer, if you are an indigent citizen, the law says the police shall inform the legal aid council to get you a lawyer at the expense of the Nigerian state. The final one, there are many, a legion of rights, have a lot of blame when it comes to the rights of Nigerians.
Hey!
of Communications and the start of the seventh Democratic administration, which took effect from June 30th, 2024. And he, after of course serving in the same portfolio as minister from March 2023. Please let's give him a Nigerian welcome. Let's warmly welcome him to Nigeria. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. Also coming to the stage now, I have Hannah Cates. She leads the Open Data Division of Steers, a Pan-African data company, and her open data team creates impactful data products that increase transparency into Africa's political systems and the management of public goods. Please welcome Hannah to the stage. And rounding out our plenary speakers, before I introduce the moderator for this section, is Mutemi Wa Kiama. He is a communicator. He is the founder of a foundation.
Technology is an important and crucial part of the future, and especially politics, elections in Africa will be dependent a lot on how we're able to use technology appropriately for electoral process. And I'm really honored to be here this morning to have that conversation with these panelists. Okay, so we're going to start off because there's quite a bit of grounds to cover when it comes to the issue of technology and political process in Africa. Very recently in our own elections here in Nigeria, a lot of people were pretty looking forward to a seamless process because everybody got excited about the IREV, the BVAS we had, and felt that everything would go smoothly. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case in our own elections. Election results weren't posted at the time that we expected them to be. And there was a lot of, people were somewhat dissuaded from the potential of technology in our electoral process. And even till now, we're still healing from that. So my very first question to you, because none of you are from Nigeria, so I'm assuming that you've had your own experience in technology, but let's start from the basics. What role?
The very inspirational speech from the former Vice President. I come from Kenya, which has had its share of challenges with the electoral interference. And we are also one of the countries that was first to innovate in terms of use of technology for money with M-Pesa. So right now in Kenya, it's possible to purchase almost everything with your mobile phone. And the level at which it is, even people with the most basic of mobile devices are able to make purchases or transfer money, their bank money and that kind of thing. So it's very surprising that a country where there's so much trust in technology in terms of use for monetary transactions, we are one of the there's the least trust in use of technology for democratic purposes. I believe that the technology we have right now, blockchain and that kind of thing, and the level of adoption of technology in Kenya, right, that it is possible to conduct an election using your mobile phone and know those results within half an hour. Right. But because of the lack of trust and the desire to manipulate elections, that is not possible. So let me leave it at that.
Let me come to Hannah, because I know you are into data. That's your area. What are some of the key technological advancements currently shaping politics in Africa, or do you think we can actually adopt within Africa?
Sure. Okay, I just wanted to make sure this was on. So as far as technological advancements that can help with political engagement, I think there are just so many different angles where technology is involved, and some of them aren't even necessarily that groundbreaking anymore, but there can just be better adoption of them. So using technological tools to gather data, whether it be through crowdsourcing or new innovative data collection techniques, to help inform public opinion and help shape people's perspective on what they should care about from politics and what they should expect from their politicians. So data and technology is important for informing the conversation. It's also important for disseminating those important ideas to the public, getting people to rally around important ideas. And then also importantly, when it comes time to actually vote and hold elections, there are new technologies for streamlining that process. But as we've seen, they don't always work that well. Depends on how well they are managed. And then finally, technology can be used to provide a counter check and helps hold those systems to account, which we saw with Nigeria's elections, where thanks to social media, which again isn't that groundbreaking anymore, we were able to clearly immediately see proof of what people were finding on iRev of results that were not actually results or were illegible. So it's not even new groundbreaking technology that we need, it's just getting people organized.
And to improve upon it. Let's come to you, sir, because as a deputy minister.
Madam Moderator and my colleagues, and I also want to echo my friend that the Vice President, I said to him as he was going down that he has cost us a job because he said everything that is supposed to be said here. And I said, I wish they didn't invite you so that we've got something to say. We've got something to say. The transparency, accountability, and openness in South Africa, its importance and significance is a function of our experience of the history of the country. Because for many years, I say 300 years, racial supremacy was kept through suppression of information, through making sure that there's limited access to knowledge, so through making sure that society is at the mercy of those who keep information. Because in South Africa we experienced that, we defeated that system. Even our constitution ensures that the right to information is a constitutional right. You can check our clauses. Now what does then technology do? Technology arrives to make sure that this is not just a constitutional statement. People have got access to different forms of technology that enable them to have access as a society, also government to know the concerns of society timely. For instance, if people raise concern, but because you are able to have access to the data, you know what background that informs that thinking. On an informed basis, there is a productive relationship towards resolving the problems. The point I'm making is that digitally based, digitally enabled, stands to be political actions that build a sustainable society.
But is that trust? Because sometimes Africans, we have that issue of trusting the data. Yes, they say machines don't lie, technology doesn't lie, but sometimes it can be manipulated. So do you think in Africa, let me stay on you, sir, do you think we've built enough trust with the people to actually trust the data that Hannah was talking about earlier?
Well, they say, it's an old word, that the taste of the pudding is in its eating. I think the outcomes of the use of technology will determine whether technology is worth trusting or not. It's one thing to say it's going to be useful. It's another to make sure that it delivers what can be trusted. I can say, without fear of any contradiction, in our country, what we need now is to improve the trust in technology, because we've got a trust in constitution. But now we must trust the technology to make sure that that which is in the constitution can actually not be distorted through what we call technology. Up to this point now in our country, all elections generally, the results are what we call are accepted. I don't have to tell you the recent history, where a huge liberation movement, like the one I belong to, got a 40%. But because South Africans trust the process, they have tested it before, they have found it to be delivering proper results. So going forward, they feel it is the ultimate thing to rely on. Technology, in my view, should also make sure that in taking forward that transparency through the Constitution, it must find expression in results that it can be trusted. I'm not sure if I'm responding.
Yes, I mean, you attempted to. I think that's good. Let me come to you, Sarah, because the issue of election fraud is something that we've seen prevalent in this part of the world. In Nigeria, we talk about ballot box snatching. Even recently with the last elections, we're told in our country that the presidential results will be uploaded real time. Unfortunately, it wasn't done. And of course, that raised a lot of concerns. Now, at the end of the day, maybe we're able to count the votes, but the fact that at the moment you said technology was going to work, it didn't work, that affects the trust I was talking about earlier. And we didn't see the results that we expected to get. So it's very difficult to really believe that technology is the answer to combat election fraud. So what do you think? How do you think we can actually ensure that we win the trust of people and ensure that technology is actually used to combat election fraud going forward?
Thank you for that question. And thank you for the example. South Africa is a good example of how trusts can be leveraged. The example I gave in Kenya, whereby we have one of the biggest mobile networks in Africa, which has a subscriber base of about 36 million people who can stream Netflix movies at the same time. But when it comes to transmitting electoral results, which are about 40 MBs, so 44,000 SMSs, which are about 40 MBs, the system crashes. A system that can transmit, that can allow 30 billion people to watch movies at the same time. So it's not the issue of technology. The technology works. The issue is the trust, as you pointed it out. And building that trust means that citizens have to play their role. So one of the biggest challenges we have in Africa is participation, citizen participation. So what we are focused on in Kenya is first to demonstrate to citizens. I give the example of M-Pesa, which is, I mean, there's no bigger issue of trust than money. And if people trust that their mobile phones can transact money safely, then the trust is there. So what is lacking? So you're trying to bridge that trust gap by demonstrating that citizens can actually influence decisions. And that was demonstrated by the Gen Z protests. I think one of the intro videos captured that, whereby citizens trusted that though any organizing that is not being done in conjunction with government, building platforms that have been, they've been done by citizens themselves, then there's an element of trust, public participation, which is also enshrined in the Constitution of Kenya, which is modeled on the South African Constitution. So the key is, how do we bring citizens in large numbers to the point where they're able to influence political decisions, but also oversight the implementation. And unfortunately, in Kenya, we have a regime the last 10 years now, or no, more than 10 years, that is hell-bent on making sure that this trust is not built. Right now, there are bills in Parliament to prevent live transmission of results of elections, to prevent the use of technology to ensure that the elections are fast and transparent. And that's where the citizens have to be active in pushing back against some of these things.
Right. Okay, thank you very much. Let me come to Hannah. Let's talk about social media and all the misinformation that happens, or how we're able to sway votes online. Just the recently concluded American elections, we saw how the X was used. I mean, I can say, we can even take it as far back as Obama's elections. We saw the role social media played in some of these elections and how people were able to maybe reduce the number of voters from certain regions just because of how they were able to stop certain comments from being put out there from various platforms. What do you think, especially in Africa? Our democracy is still growing, and the mindset of people are still not totally formed or independent enough. How do you think social media can play a crucial role for or against electoral process?
Yeah, so unfortunately, I think the answer is that it's going to play both roles. We've already seen how social media empowers people and educates people and gets them organized towards a cause, but it also spreads, rampant misinformation, and we're still at a stage where it's really hard to stop that. There are fact-checking organizations that are working to help dispel these issues. I've seen a lot of them focusing on Twitter specifically, where you can, if you see something that looks suspicious, you can @ that fact-checking account and it'll generate a response of whether it believes that information to be credible. But there's very little awareness of those tools, and I think it's also hard for fact-checking organizations to keep up with new misinformation that's spreading. So you might @ that bot and it won't have anything to say.
But Hannah, for a democracy like ours, or in Africa, that is still growing, when we're in a country where the average might be literate enough to know right from wrong, or even choose, they're able to make their own choices. But here, we're easily swayed based on there are various factors: tribe, religion, culture. There's so many factors that will cause you to be swayed to a certain area. So how do you think, in your own perspective, we can use social media more responsibly in Africa towards our elections?
Yeah, it's a tough question, and I don't have a perfect answer. I think the best thing that comes to mind is just more focus on trying to educate those people, making sure that information, like fact-checking reports, are published in local languages and communicated offline as well.
Okay.
Some organizations are focusing on misinformation spreading through radio, like CGID has been focusing on that with the Dubawa program.
Right.
So yeah, figuring out how to reach those people where they are, I think, is the key thing.
Okay, Mr. Musemi wanted to jump in there.
Yeah, I just wanted to come in from a perspective that we've actually worked on X from 2013 up to around 2015. So in Kenya, the mainstream media, legacy media, like the one the Vice President was pointing to, had been totally captured. Even now, it's totally captured by the political class. So we set out to make X the platform for, let's call it the fifth estate, where citizens could use the platform to disseminate information, but also to hold the government and elected and appointed officials to account. And I must say we succeeded. And the way we did that was data and facts. So we had a lot of propaganda from the government side. Cambridge Analytica did its first trial runs in Kenya in the 2013 election. And we were a small team that was fighting. That time we were being called, actually, when we talked about Cambridge Analytica, we were called conspiracy theorists, but we knew they were there. And they were manipulating sentiment using Facebook and X, and we set out to take over X. And the result of that is that today, every government department has an X account. And that X account is manned by competent staff, and there are citizens who are every day monitoring those X accounts and the information that is being put out there, and it's being fact-checked live. Like, it's gotten to a point where, real time, it's gotten to a point where even if you make a mistake of tweeting as a government account and you delete that tweet, already someone has screenshot that tweet and it will come back to bite you. So I guess we talk about eternal vigilance from citizens.
Great, thank you very much. Let me come to you, Mr. Deputy Minister, because we're still in the digital age. Let's talk about the digital divide between the urban areas and the rural areas. We understand the importance of how we can use technology to get more people involved in governance, involved in the electoral process. But how do we close that gap of that digital divide for those living in the rural areas versus those in the urban areas?
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. There are programs in South Africa, in particular a popular one called SA Connect, which is mainly focusing on the rural and townships. In other words, the socio-economically marginalized people. What makes it very significant is that if you go to South Africa now, you go to the urban centers, there's a lot of shacks around the urban centers. People having migrated from rural areas. When you sit with them, try to find out why are you here. You find that more than 70 to 80% of their concerns are concerns that could have been addressed where they are had they been what you call connected. And if you look at the cost they incur and the cost of living in the urban centers where they don't have houses, therefore that divide, when dealt with through technology, it improves lives of many without just a waste of time. In South Africa, not just last year, we connected not less than 1 million households who have got access to a gig for about 5 or 7 rand. And that is already beginning to speak to the bigger mobile companies. That if more of us are connected, one, hope is strengthened, inspiration and aspirations about future are well-founded. People tend to look forward to a successful country because they have got an opportunity to have access to that information. That connectivity is beginning to demonstrate that it can work. Lastly, I want to repeat the point about the trust. South Africans, they're both positive and negative. You must have heard about something called fees must fall. Social media was used to wage that, and government yielded, submitted. To date, the access to education has drastically improved. That was a positive delivery by technology. But there was also a negative delivery by technology in 2021 during the violence, which I think most of you know. So South Africans know both positive and negative. Technology has got a bearing in your life. The sooner you actually understand, the sooner you have access to it, the better. South Africans have accepted that you can no longer run away from it. But the challenge now is how do we enable them to have that access and so on.
Fantastic. That goes to what Hannah said earlier. Hannah, let me come back to you, because there's also a part of this conversation we've not touched on, the demand and the supply. The people must demand justice. They must they demand governance. They demand the rule of law. So how do you think we can even learn from the US experience of how citizens demand on social media and ensure, because here you say a lot on social media, but sometimes nothing really happens. And you just keep talking, and we just feel like you're just talking heads. But how do you think citizens can better use technology to demand their rights and to demand governance, which is what they're deserving as citizens? So how do you think we can use that better?
Yeah, so I think there are two important things that citizens need in order to be able to address these issues and actually have them hopefully make some change and progress. The first is an awareness of what the appropriate escalation channels are. Complaining into the void on social media generally isn't going to accomplish anything unless the right people see it, who have the ability to actually act on that feedback. So having an awareness of the right escalation channels, of which government ministry you should be adding, if there are certain reporters who have relationships at that ministry who can help kind of escalate the issue to the right people, figuring out how to send that feedback to the right people who can then do something with it is really important. And that's something that's still very opaque to me as someone who's still pretty new in Nigeria. So that lack of awareness is something that's a big problem. And then once you figure out who should actually be accountable for solving that problem, or be held to account for some government service not operating correctly, there need to be actual systems for punishing those people in some way. People, if they've broken the law, they should be taken to court or they should lose their jobs. There need to be functional institutions that actually give people the right justice.
So Hannah talked about institutions. Let me come to you, Mr. Kayama. Do we have those kind of institutions in Africa? Do we have those kind of institutions that can hold people accountable? Because when we make demands, sometimes nothing happens. Because the reason why I can be sure to report to an institution or a system is because I know that I'm going to get justice. But sometimes you speak and nothing happens. So let me come to you, Mr. Kayama. Do you think, or how do you think Africa can strengthen our system such that when the demands are made, especially using the tool of social media, people are not arrested? Because I've seen a lot of African countries, even Nigeria, if you fall on deaf ears. So how do we ensure that we strengthen our institutions enough for Africans to be able to hold their government accountable, especially via social media?
Oh, okay, sorry.
I thought I was talking to
In Kenya right now, and especially at protests, and especially mobilized on TikTokers around that, who are, and I think happened after the protest in Nigeria around end good governance and end bad governance. So institutions have to do their work. Like I said, the Kenyan constitution is modeled on the South African constitution. And the reason why the constitution is working in South Africa is that their institutions, their courts are very good. They've taken up their mandate as granted by the constitution, and they are implementing it such that a few years ago, even the former president, Zuma, was actually put in jail, you know. So unfortunately, in my country, in Kenya, these institutions have been given the liberty to implement, to do their work by the constitution, but a lot of them have refused to do that because they pander to the executive. They've been captured by the executive. The Parliament of Kenya is the most powerful institution as per the constitution because it's supposed to oversight everybody. But that parliament has been pocketed by the president or the executive and is not serving the people. So at some point, we are thinking, we, the people who are pro-democracy actors, civil society, are rethinking representation. How do we remodel the governance system? Because the system we have right now is largely modeled around what was handed over when the state was, when you go to the so-called independence from our colonial masters. How else can we reimagine governance? Leadership in Kenya is not doing their part. Rightly or wrongly, they only go into parliament, you know, to make money and to serve the interest of not of the citizens, but of whoever it is that sponsors them to parliament. So it's building institutions that are modeled on the citizens. But then to do that, you need an informed citizen. And so we are very, we are very focused on political education, whereby citizens can connect dots around how politics influences their lives. Thank you.
Okay, so we talked about demand. Thank you very much. We've talked about demand. Let's talk about supply. Supply being from the part of the government. They are also providing you information on what they're doing. How do you think governments across Africa, even within Africa, can employ technology to provide information? Because many of our government parastatals are actually they're so used to, you know, calling a press briefing. So how do you think government can supply information using technology more effectively going forward?
So it's called Serikali. Serikali is derived from Seri is secret. Kali is tough secret. That's direct translation. That means the government's work is to hoard information, to keep it away from public. So when you have such a mantra whereby government sees itself as, you know, using the official acts and official secret acts and that kind of thing to withhold information from the public that is supposed to be serving, because the colonial mentality is they are rulers, not leaders. So until we shift that perception whereby government officials, civil servants feel like their work, once you join government, your work is to keep information away from the people. So what technology can do is, and what it is doing in Kenya is, with a lot of resistance, is making sure that this information is available. We have leaks, we have people who have built platforms that are making these, fact-checking, making information available to the public. And it seems that the government does not know how to deal with that, with the fact that what they thought that keep secret now you have a much more informed public and a much more demanding public. So I guess it's to keep doing that. It's keep information available.
Let me come to you, Anna. The same question. How can government use that? I'll also come to you, sir. Don't worry. All of you are going to answer this question. Because we saw in the Trump elections how Trump tweets almost every other day. He's constantly tweeting. And we know what's on his mind. He wants to build the borders. He wants to build the wall. And he wants to get rid of all the immigrants. You know, we see it on his Twitter page. So my question to you is that do you think Africa can adopt the same system where our leaders are presidents thinking per time? But what do you think? How do you think we can learn from that, or do you think it's a good thing to use social media as leaders to communicate to you?
You know, teams should potentially ask questions and provide reliable information. I also think that beyond social media, there's a lot of improvement that could be made on government websites to make sure that all the information there is up to date, first of all, because that's a common problem. So up-to-date information on government websites, a better, easier user interface that makes it easier to search for information, and once you find that information, ideally presenting it in a way that's easier to consume and more flexible to consume for other purposes. So that's publishing data in machine-readable formats, not just in PDF reports or images, as well as presenting information more visually when possible to make it easier to understand when you're presenting statistics and help provide more perspective. So yeah, I think there's a lot of ways that government could communicate more clearly.
All right, Mr. Deputy Minister, would you like to also add a few things to that?
I think in our country, there's a law of right of access to information. And you cannot just hide any information. Our constitution determines which information can be hidden, whether it's for security. Even the security issue is well defined in law. It's not something out of your own that you can do. Now, there's a right of access to information. At the same time, there's a right to protection of personal information. Our challenge is no longer legalities around those matters. It's to improve technology to make sure that technology helps those things to translate in realizing the objectives for which they were originally intended. The point I also want to make is that, especially when you use His Excellency, who tweets a lot, is that in South Africa, one of the things I love our constitution about is that what divided us for 300 years is well known in South Africa. There's always a fear of going back to that. Whether it's tribalism, whether it's racism, sexism, and all those issues, those are issues that have divided the country. So those issues have been crafted in the constitution. So there are certain things in South Africa, even if you are campaigning, if you campaign around those things, you know we are going to lose elections. You cannot just win elections because you promise people food. They don't separate value system, food, and so on, and all those other kind of issues. But the point is, the challenge we have now is infrastructure, is to make sure that we resource people to exploit what already in terms of the law exists. So I thought I wanted to make that, and like Kenya said, the power of the constitution, there are certain things that cannot be done by technology, but technology must just affirm them. The value system of the country generally is not going to be done by technology. The citizens must agree how they want to live their life. So that's why I'm saying to you, judicial institutions, finance, you must have known for a couple of years in South Africa, there was a state capture. Constitution of South Africa, which is a function of the value system of the country, is the one that makes sure that those institutions survive that. But technology enables people to make use of the benefits that exist in that constitution equally and equitably.
You know, while you're talking, and this is a side note, this is not really based on what you just said, but I caught something. I'm not sure if the Nigerians in the audience caught this, but I caught it based on, he kept going back to the experience they had, formed the foundation of the Constitution. And I also remember the conversation I had sometime in Rwanda. The same thing, the genocide they had formed the basis of the respect and value system. So as in Nigeria, maybe one of our problems is that we haven't confronted our war, the civil war we had. we haven't had a conversation to really forgive each other, right? And have a renewed perspective of who we are as a people and agrees. That should then form the foundation, because all what we're asking for will be built after. You can't just sweep a civil war under the carpet. No, we've got to confront it with each other, look at each other's face and apologize to each other and come back as a nation and say, then we agree to be one collectively. That's what I caught from that. I'm not sure if you guys caught that, but that's a side note. But I really think it's crucial, because all the thing we're looking for is from where we all believe together that we are one, that we can now begin to say, you know what, I have a stake in this thing called Nigeria. Everything we are building, the electoral process, we're doing it in the interest of us, not for a specific few. Moving on. Let's go now to the cost of technology, because, and I'll probably come back and start with you, sir, from South Africa. It's easy for us to talk about technology, but there's a cost to it. Not many countries within Africa can afford it. I mean, the reason why we're discussing transparency, the data collection, is because technology would provide these things for you, but at a cost, not many economies can afford. How do you think those of you, maybe South Africa, that have the ability, can help other nations to ensure technology is adopted across Africa, not just in certain parts of Africa?
Well, cost is an issue. Our country has even gone to an inquiry in that regard. But there's one thing that all of us now know we can no longer debate, is that where technology is efficiently applied, it is done at the least cost, high quality, agility, speed, and everything. But now, how then do we make sure that everyone access that low cost? I've already spoken to you about what we are doing with regard to the connecting the poor. But having said that, not long ago, our department has already tabled before Treasury. South Africans' ownership of mobile phone is more than 100%. Smartphones are about 70 or 60%. Now, it means people have got a device in their hand through which they can be able to access information. But the question, at what cost? While engaging, we've already made proposal to the Treasury Finance, that everything must be done to make sure that all those who produce those devices do it at such a least cost that ordinary people can actually use them without pay. Because there's a cost benefit in that. Because if poor people have got access to information that changes their life, it changes the economy, it intensifies it, revenue and everything, infrastructures get developed. So you've got fewer people who are poor. And even to those who are making business, it makes business because your market also increases. So the cost is an issue. It's what we are working on. Of course, we're dealing with the issues of the data policy to make sure that it's done actually within the law, but the law that does not kill the freedom of expression.
Would you like to also add to that issue of costs in Africa?
So a lot of the things that the basic tools of technology that share information, as the minister said, are easily available right now. So for me, the costs actually would be towards training people to use these tools effectively and to be able to distill the information so that they're able to make the correct use of that information. So information is available. We need to apply. And there are organizations that are able to synthesize the information and package it in a way that citizens can consume that at a very low cost. I think the SMS, for example, in Kenya, the cost is negligible. As pointed out, if you change the paradigm from keeping secrets to availing information, because our governments in Africa are struggling to create employment, to provide livelihoods for their citizens. So the least they can do is to make sure that information is available at a very low cost, because our people are able to then synthesize that information and use it to to innovate. So cost really should be an issue.
Right. Okay, I'm going to have the final round of questions. But sorry, a final round of questions, then we'll start taking quick Q&A from the audience. But you wanted to add something, sir? What you wanted to add something?
I just wanted to say, they write SMS, but there are those through audio. If the technology is multi-language intelligent, it can enable everyone to not only depend on writing, also talking, and actually be capable of being heard.
Yeah. Okay, so in my final round in elections and even in reducing corruption in governance.
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of opportunities for AI to help people process information more quickly and easily, to conduct research, to read through things like legislation, to summarize it, to better understand rules that are currently in place that they might want, that citizens might have issue with and need to advocate for change around. So I'm optimistic about AI's role in helping citizens become more informed, especially when it comes to processing government documents that might have a lot of legalese that's kind of hard for the average person to understand. Using tools like that to help people better understand government so that they're more informed as voters. I also think that AI can be used as an accountability check for systems like Nigeria's iRev system, for example. The results from each of the individual polling units are uploaded as images. With AI and optical character recognition tools now, it's easier to extract that information systematically from something that would otherwise require a lot of manual data entry. So it could be easier for civic activists to extract information from these systems to verify and validate the official results coming from the government. So there are applications like that where it can help speed up the process of something that would be otherwise quite difficult. As far as the blockchain, it's not something that I've looked into as much. I believe Estonia is using it in some capacity, but yeah, I think that there's a lot of trust building.
Technology, the future, or the use of AI in governance. Is Africa ready for that, do you think?
I think our history dictates that we should be ready. We have got a constitution we trust, but we have realized that the more we use technology in election, the better. Because queues that take nearly 2 days have frustrated many people. Others end up not going to what to call. So the appreciation of technology is no longer in question. But you cannot substitute digital literacy as a key tool so that citizens on their own, they can test the authenticity of technology. So this is, to me, is the most critical thing, that society must be trained, digitally enabled, so that as they understand the benefits of AI, so I think, is it last year? In Davos, you must have seen a drama where Schwab, the original founder of Davos, was seen walking on television, being insulted by an individual. And we were there, we didn't see that. But the world was fed with that information. So the literacy of civil society, digital literacy of civil society, is going to be key to future. There's a chap called Jack Dyer. He's a CEO of one company in America. He says, you AI or you die.
Right. Thank you very much. Please give a round of applause. We're going to be wrapping up, but would you like to touch on that, the issue of AI, future of elections in Africa? Would you like to touch on that a bit?
I'd just like to emphasize what the Honorable Minister has said. You AI or you die. We are at a stage where in Africa, we have a lot of people, a lot of governments are clueless in terms of how to provide services to their people, opportunities to young people. And then AI now is coming to assess that. It's going to make it even worse because a lot of the jobs that have been promised to these young people are going to be taken over by AI and robots. So when you have a population of young people, energetic and idle, in quotes, they don't have jobs, like what happened in Kenya. they're going to go to the streets. So you better react to it. And it's not 5 years from now. It's now.
Exactly. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you so much. I'm told we have a few minutes for Q&A. So if you have any questions concerning technology, I know technology is not always very easy conversations to have, but the truth is that it's the future, and we need to simplify it and see the importance of it going forward. Our elections across Africa are happening, and we must employ trust for us to move forward. Many Africans still are skeptical about the role technology plays, especially because they are fearful of sabotage and all that. So I would like to throw some questions out, take some questions from the audience to our panelists on what your thoughts, your concerns concerning technology's usage in our election and governance going forward. Any questions from anywhere? Your thoughts? Yes, sir. Is he on? We need the mic to work, please. Okay.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much. So my question is, how do we ensure that this technology that we're going to create, rather, that they work effectively in the way that they were made to work? My example is this. You know, X, before now was Twitter, right? We realized after Elon Musk bought Twitter that how do we ensure that these things do not happen when we try to create it? And we must ensure, that's my question. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. There's a simple mantra in anything to do with IT or tech. Garbage in, garbage out. So whoever is feeding that tech or using that tech, Bill Clinton said it's the economy stupid. I would say it's the leader. In Africa, it's leadership stupid. So if you don't have the right leaders, the right people oversighting or making sure that you input the right data, or these institutions, it's very easy to use technology to manipulate an election, as has happened in Kenya the last 3 electoral cycles. Because the people who are leading are not trustworthy. So it's to ensure that Africans have to ensure that the leaders they put in place are people who have the correct value systems and are people who can be trusted.
I think you're making a very important point. The fact that things are good, they are not always used for a noble intention. That's why independent test is critical. For instance, that's why I keep on saying there's nothing that will replace a founding constitution, which is agreed. Because you test everything against your constitution, whether it doesn't undermine what your country stands for or not. You do not do it by stopping them from playing out whatever their intentions are. But it must also be tested against the value system of the country. That can only be done by independent, what you call, institutions. Everyone who's got an opportunity, you know, you heard Elon Musk what he was saying, how he is pro, what I would refer to as plutocrat. Plutocracy is about control of the economy by a few powerful business guys. And if they take over government, they take over to pursue that purpose. That, yes, we are democratic in a manner that ensures that our clique continues to be in power. So you need an independent system that takes care of the entire nation, whether poor or rich. So it is always possible to do that. Yes. We've done in South Africa a number of times where information has been questioned. When information is questioned, it gets tested in the Constitution. If it does not meet the founding principles of our Constitution, it gets censored.
Yeah. I like how you always go back to your Constitution. I find that really admirable. Let's take two more questions from the yes one that corner, and I think I'll take one from this corner. Yes, the man at the end. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. Rather, good morning.
Good afternoon.
My name is Mekachi. Thank you, the panelists, for your talk so far. To me, I believe technology is one of the most integral parts of every reasonable economy. We understand Nigeria and Africa, the way things are actually going now. So, based on this, what do you think is the best model to be proposed to our Nigerian political system? Because I believe that even come election 2027, there were different models that were proposed that will make things we are still going back and forth, and things are not going well. Even come American election, people still vote from their houses, even offices, because there's a model they've designed that make things go well over there. So with this, what model should be proposed for a better technology system when it comes to political aspects for that in Nigeria? That's one. Then secondly, we understand that technology when it comes to the media, when it comes to, before we had DSTV, GoTV, it was cable. We have to plug an antenna up there. DSTV came, GoTV came. But we realized that there's no competition among us here when it comes to communication in terms of MTN, GoTV, DSTV. So when there's no competition, things happen. Things are so stiff. Like for example, now when GT Bank had their another software being migrated, there was a lot of stampede and people had a lot of things happening. So that's dragged us back and forth, and we're not moving forward. So with this, what should be the way forward when it comes to the political system, when it comes to media and other parts of technology? And lastly, I realized that AI to me in Nigeria may not actually work, because even people tend to manipulate that. For example, when we had that, the president had maybe a slip or fall during the June 12th, people said it's AI, people said this. So people tend to manipulate a lot of things when it comes to AI in Nigeria. So all these things, so how do we tend to move forward with this when it comes to AI? Because technology is improving day by day in Nigeria and over the world. Thank you.
All right, so that's 3 questions in one. I got the first and last. I'm not sure I got the second one. But the first one is more about policy, election policy, saying voting abroad, there's captured. Did I get that first question properly? Yes, so what are your thoughts on policy-wise as regards electronic voting? Who would like to take that?
Let's see how Kenya deals with it.
Do you guys do electronic voting in your part of your country?
Our election is called digital. It's supposed to be electronic, but every day in the morning of the election, the technology fails. So
sounds familiar.
After spending so many billions buying the technology every election cycle, so I guess I'll go again to the issue of the minister talked about policy, but also leadership. Who do we put in a very foolproof system? And it was so foolproof that the person in charge of that election, that system was being interviewed on all major TV stations, blogs, and that kind of thing. And remember you mentioned about trust. He had restored trust in the electoral management organization. A week to the election, he was abducted and he was found dead with his fingers, because he had created a system where only his biometrics could change the system. So someone picked him up, cut off his fingers that were supposed to be used metric and that kind of thing. So
in Kenya?
In Kenya, yes, this is 2017.
Sure.
And this is a state of issue, a high up state of issue. There has never been an investigation into that issue. Why? Because I would say the state was involved. The state wanted to manipulate the election. This guy was doing his job correctly, guaranteeing the election cannot be manipulated, and he had to be taken out. So I'll leave it there.
I mean, that takes a few minutes to take in. I don't even understand. Because how does that happen? Well, anyway, let's come to you, Mr. Deputy Minister. Yeah, what are your thoughts on this issue of electoral?
I might be repeating something that can be boring. The principles of rules of engagements are key. In your country, what system of government do you want? It must be agreed. And how then do you put together a process of realizing the objectives of that becomes very important. The other issue that you can never substitute is awareness. people take education for democracy for granted. In South Africa, voter education, it's a routine. And we have realized that it has actually made a lot of people understand the help that lies in you going to vote. So all I'm saying is that the system that you agree upon must be based on your constitution. 2, people must be educated on how that system works. When you come to competition, competition is a very difficult issue. In South Africa, as I speak to you now, I said we had an inquiry to check how can you make sure that digital technology does not perpetuate inequalities and ensuring that there's access to economy. We are ongoing, there's been finding in regard to that. At the end of the day, once you realize the factors that undermine competition, you need a credible, independent regulatory institution to make sure that those are what to call are implemented. There is no perfect constitution, perfect law at any point in time. But at least there must be something you agree upon, keep on testing it. If it's got weaknesses, keep amending until you get closer to the ideals of humanity. That's the least one can say.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
I'd just like to add, and it's good the minister has mentioned. So the Kenyan constitution was created after a near civil war in the country. In other words, it was modeled on the South African, and all those safeguards were put in place. And at that time, constitutional experts refer to it as the best constitution in the world. Now, since that constitution was passed in 2010, the elite, the political elite, have systematically stepped out to dismantle it. So it was passed through a process to pacify the public, but it did not work for the people in power. So the reason why I keep emphasizing leadership is that if you have you have the safeguards, but if you have the wrong leadership in place, they will do whatever they can. As you are seeing this in the US also, a systematic attempt to dismantle democratic systems. And the people who have come, they have a very clear stated objective. They want to bring down that democratic system. And that is what we have in Kenya also. Interestingly, this is an aside, is that the same PR organization that brought in the current regime in Kenya is the same one that has brought in the new regime or the incoming regime in the US. So there are these guys, we talked about demand and supply, there are these guys who are anti-democratic and they are going around the world, started with Cambridge Analytica, spreading, I don't know what to call it because it's not democracy.
Right.
And they are very deliberate about it.
All right. Thank you very much. We got to wrap up very soon. But there was a final question which I thought was important about the AI.
I forgot just to say
Yes.
one thing, sorry. In South Africa, we've got something called electoral court. It's also critical just to focus on the defects of election processes. That's why it's important in a country you must have courts that specialize in particular areas. You've got a labor court, you've got electoral court. So when elections are on in South Africa, the most active court is the electoral court to make sure that there will always be criminals. A good system will always have its, how do you call it? There will always be those criminals who don't want that system. And they will never retire.
Right.
So those the majority then who want a noble system must also not retire in doing everything to protect it.
Thank you very much. You want to say something? Yes. Let me go ahead. You want to ask a question?
Thank you. The Honorable Minister has spoken quite a bit about the South African Constitution, as Mariah said. And he made a point that reminded me of a phrase from the preamble to the US Constitution. And I wanted to read it, because underlying whatever we do with technology is what us as human beings agree on and what we want. So it says, we, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution. So it just speaks to what they as a people have agreed, and it continues to form the basis of how they fight and how they engage. And it just aligns with your point, Deputy Minister, that we must agree on the kind of country we want and fight for it accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think I alluded to that when you stepped out also, because it's really crucial. He kept going back to his history, that what they went through formed the foundation. I said the same thing that happened in Rwanda. The genocides formed the foundation of what they have. So we as a people, we can't sweep our past away. We must be reminded of those hurts, those pains, confront them, and then agree. Those things are very crucial for us to form the foundation of all we've spoken about here today. But thank you very much. Please give a round of applause to our panelists. That's all we can take on this. And I think we'll have some pictures, and then we're done.
Thank you once again to our panelists and our moderator for this session. It was a very good one, and the place of history in the present and, of course, the future cannot be overemphasized. Please, a round of applause for them one more time. So we still have another spotlight session that's coming up right now. And don't forget that we do have concurrent breakout sessions that will also be happening, and then the lunch break. But before we get to the lunch break, we're looking at 25 years of democracy in Nigeria in the Fourth Republic. And that's a very interesting conversation where we've just come off of a conversation about how history can be the foundation for so many things. So we have two distinguished individuals that will be joining Moriah on stage in just a moment. All right, so joining her on stage right now, please let's welcome Engineer Sholabumi Musumola Shasori. She's the distinguished Lagos State civil servant with a robust career spanning over 15 years. Having joined the Lagos State Civil Service in 2009, she has served in various critical roles across multiple ministries, departments, and agencies, including the Public-Private Partnership Office and the Lagos State Public Procurement Agency. Right now, she's a member of the Council for the Regulations of Engineering in Nigeria and the Chartered Institute of Purchasing and Supply. Please, a round of applause for her. She's also a PermSec in Lagos State, of course, in the Office of Political, Legislative, and Civic Education. Please, a round of applause for all she's doing. And joining her also, we have Tunji Lardner. He is a seasoned media professional and international development expert with a bachelor's degree in philosophy from the University of Lagos. His career spans journalism, academia, and international organizations, including significant roles within the United Nations system. His academic contributions include positions as an adjunct professor at Research Fellow at the Freedom Forum Media Studies Center. He also studied as a Reuters Scholar Knight Fellow at Stanford University. Very, very impressive backgrounds and portfolios we have on stage for you. Please, a round of applause for them. And this conversation, I'm sure, is one that will spur many, many other conversations. A spotlight session, 25 years of democracy in Nigeria in the Fourth Republic. It's back to you, Moriah.
Thank you very much. Do we have mics for that? Jimmy. Okay, so good to be here again. So we're discussing 25 years of democracy in Nigeria in the Fourth Republic. And one of the key subtopics is the issue of the demand and the supply, where we understand that in technology, and especially when it comes to governance, there's a part of demand where the people will demand governance, and there's a part of supply where government is telling us, this is what we are giving to you and we're meeting you halfway. I want to start with the formation of our democracy. People have been demanding, and I remember when the June 12 happened, 1993, it was a time when Nigerians were demanding the results of the elections conclusion, which was eventually annulled by the then head of state, Babangida. And since then, it birthed a system of where Nigerians felt it was important for us to make that demand. Unfortunately, our hopes were dashed at that time. And from then up until now, Nigerians still don't feel like we have gotten the benefits of this democracy we all fought for. In your own view, and I'd like you to take the floor now to share your thoughts, between that time until now, how do you think the demand for democracy has fared, and how do you think we can move forward from there?
Thank you. It's great to be here. It's interesting the way it's been phrased. The bookends of from Radio Kudirat to TikTok. It's interesting. One can almost imagine in your mind's eye that you're making a transition from an analog type of engagement, civic society, to digital. Two other things pop out. The first one was Radio Kudirat was homegrown. It was our own way of protesting. I don't know how many of you know the history of Radio Kudirat. It was, some people allege, was a rogue radio station in the heat of pushing the military out. I'm not at liberty to reveal some of the things that happened. The other part of this equation, obviously, is TikTok. Obviously, TikTok is not Nigerian. It's a universal thing that appeals to particular demographics. So within the context of democracy now, the Fourth Republic is actually from 1999 to where we are here. You have to ask yourself what happened in the preceding three republics. I happen to have been around when the first coup happened, 1966, and thereafter a long military interregnum and consequently more attempts at this democratic experiment. It's interesting because the answers, I think, are not only in the digital realm. You raise a whole bunch of issues there. Its Excellency also talked about this, the underpinnings of our South African democracy shaped by 300 years of experience. Fun fact, I was actually a UN staff observer that helped organize the first election in 1994, and fond memories of that whole experiment. The other thing that the Vice President said, friend also, was the need for us to actively participate and engage the system. And so the challenge now is, you're talking about 25 years of the Fourth Republic itself. I think the assumptions we make about democracy, systems, technology are very simplistic. We don't fully have a comprehensive understanding of the ecosystem in which we're operating. The Vice President specifically talked about the need for us to engage, right? Okay, but fun fact, do you realize that I think about 51.6% of Nigerians were born between that time, between 1999 and now? Nobody ever factors in the demographics, right? 30% of your population is under 10. 30% of your population is under 10. And a full 80% is under the age of 45. So by the time they're going up that ladder, oh, by the way, also your median age is about 18. Same for Africa. So we're dealing with very young populations that were born into a technological environment. Digital nomads like myself have had to grapple between our own analog realities and confronting this whole new digital space that all of you are born into. But the question is, how do you want to use it? How can you actually use it? And I think that is basically the ongoing questions as to where we are in 25 years of democracy.
Let me pause you for a second, because, I'm staying on you, I'll come to you for engineering structure in a moment, but let me stay on you for a minute, because I remember during that time, I was a child though, but during that time for Radio Kudirat, it wasn't everybody that was involved. You know, there were a select few, and even when the riots started, people were talking about it, and parents were warning that, don't go outside, or don't go outside, don't go and join the riot, you know, but people were hurt. They wanted to riot, right? But today you don't even need to tell anybody anything. Go on social media and you have thousands already right there. So there's a difference. One tweet, one comment. There was a tweet that happened in a state about police brutality. Before you knew it, it morphed into something bigger. So what's at stake is a bit higher today. What's at stake is a bit higher today. So in your view, how can we be more effective in how we use social media today compared to when it was back then, where you have to go on the radio to get people to come out? You know, how can we be more responsible in using that same social media to get people to demand justice going forward?
Okay, talking about effective demand of justice. Again, my position is that I think we're still being overly simplistic in understanding the complexities of Nigeria. I always joke that Nigeria is at once complex. It's like a complex system. We're all complex human beings, complex organizations, complex organisms. But Nigeria is also
yeah,
well, can you hear me? Well, I was going to make a joke about this being the story of my life, you know. I get my 15 minutes of fame and this happens. There's all those village people trying to sabotage me. But the larger point I was trying to say was Nigeria is at once complex. We know that. But Nigeria is also complicated. The reason why Nigeria is complicated is because we do not want to adhere to a rules-based system. We don't want to adhere to a logical, rational basis for organizing ourselves. And you've gone back to that issue, old wounds from the Civil War. There's a whole mishmash. There's a whole swamp of unresolved issues bordering on our identity as a nation and deciding what we want to do with Nigeria. So I always argue that Nigeria is at once complex and complicated. Therefore, Nigeria is complexicated. And that is what I always use to frame the dilemma we're in. To answer your question, I do not think that the issue right now with a young population, median age 19, is technology. Your problems are not technology, they're technical problems, and that is what technology can solve. Nigeria's problems are adaptive. They're psychosociological problems, like nation building, having an identity, having a sense of self, and finally deciding among your own generation, what do you want to do with your country? So your problems are not technology, your problems are psychology. You do not have the mindset to actually formulate something, and that is where the problem lies.
I really want to stay on you, but I have to go to Engineer Sasha because I wanted to link up what you said, what the gentleman said at the back about AI. Remember during elections, where they were forming all sorts of stories about the various candidates, this one cannot walk, that one cannot talk, that one is this, you know, and it was AI. So now, if you send that material to me, I can decipher, like, this looks fake, this doesn't look real. I mean, I sent something to my aunt, she said, bro, did you see? He said, this is not Wario, this is Jubril, it's from you know, so it's from Sudan. So, and people went to back, they went to they took out the bank. It became a fact that our president is not the president, he is from Sudan. People made it factual, and they could take it to the bank and say, yes, this is it. And that's AI. So we live in it. You say that technology is not a problem, but the problem is that we're not even literate enough to decipher what is right and what is wrong. So again, coming back to you, I'm still going to Engineer Associate. I didn't abandon you. I just want to tackle Mr. Ladner properly, where he's saying that technology is our problem. Are you sure that Africa, where we are, Nigeria right now, we actually have the capacity to assimilate, understand, and use technology appropriately and effectively, given our literacy level?
Me again?
Yeah, yes, it's
oh my
you.
goodness. All right. Okay, I'll give you an example of how I describe Nigeria for all you tech heads there. Imagine a computer right? Brilliant. What really nice firmware. The computer itself works. It's beautifully designed. It has everything. That computer is Nigeria, okay? And the other thing by extrapolation is that it might as well be speaking about Africa. Sometimes Africa is a country, other times Africa is a continent. You sit down and you listen to all the conversations and you can see the same challenges. My brothers from Kenya, all you have to do is remove parliament and use the National Assembly and you're dealing with the same type of pathology. The criminal, rapacious, and that's who we are, okay? All right, but imagine this computer, it is beautiful. The firmware is okay, it works, right? All right, you open it, it's like Nigeria blessed with all kinds of resources, not the least being human resources. It works, but there's a problem. The moment you start working, after a while, the screen freezes, stuff goes down, and you realize there's something wrong with the OS of this computer. So it means that there's no application that you can put through this computer, no matter how beautiful it is, that will work. It will not be fully optimized because there's something wrong with the OS, okay? And another level, on the peopleware, the software, the person applying and using the computer, respectively to, also has something wrong with his or her own operating system. So it's double indemnity. You have a computer, Nigeria, beautiful, has everything, but the operating system does not work properly. You have the person operating the computer, and that person's own operating system is also a little bit frazzled. So the challenge now is, what do you do? Is it impossible? No, I don't think so, right? I'm using this tech metaphor so you understand where I'm driving out. So the challenge, my dear friends, is how do you hack the operating system of Nigeria? I'm going to say it yet again. How do you hack the operating system of Nigeria? You're always having hackathons to do this, to do that. How do you hack that operating system? You cannot hack the operating system based on technology. You have to have a psycho-sociological understanding.
We'll assimilate this laptop thing. We'll come back to it. Somebody just hold it to me. Let me come to Engineer Shasori because she's on the supply part. She works for Lagos State. She's a civil servant. So she's on the part where she's supplying. I mean, Lagos State compared to other states in the country is probably one of the most forward-thinking, progressive states we have, where there's quite a bit happening here in the state. But as a government, to communicate, to use technology, sometimes there's a lot happening in Lagos State, but for any small thing that happened that is so negative, it's amplified. And I'm thinking, you think that Lagosians would appreciate that, okay, well, our governor, they are building this, they are building that. But no, Nigerians, they don't take prisoners. Once there's a problem, they amplify it on social media. So how do you think your government is using social media to project the work they're doing, and how do you think they can even use it more effectively going forward?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Nana. That was nice. That is true. Let's give you an answer as to why there is a gap. I really can't because it's a question for me as well. And that's why we're all here trying to figure out what's going on as a government. That's why we're here. That we're doing so much. Why is there still a gap? When I spoke about the demographics of the age and all that, we have the last ID card, which is meant to be all the residents in Lagos State to register, so we can plan. So we can know what kind of information, who should we be talking to, how should we be talking to them. So the question here to you here today is, what more do we need to do? Right. We're bringing in AI, we're bringing in, the user interface is going to be launched next week, an improvement of what we already have. There's some things that are going to be launched at AOT this week, coming up. But at the same time, why are they not talking to each other? I mean, what we already know, anyway, is that whilst we have so many solutions, they're not all talking to each other.
Right.
So that's one of the things we need to work on. But that doesn't speak about the feedback.
Right.
Why? Now, if I ask in this room now how many people have used the Citizens Gate, I'm sure some people say they don't even know about it. But it's been launched a couple of... In fact, I was talking to someone not too long ago and they said they didn't even know that our office existed. And I'm like, that office has been there since 2015. And there's so much has been done. So there's a major gap. But I just don't know how we're going to close that gap.
Okay, so we'll try to see if we can find a solution in this conversation, because I'll go back to what Mr. Ladner said earlier, and I like that laptop ideology. So she is Breto, the person who's on his hands in leadership, gotten so many agencies to help me to fix this Nigeria problem. I have information, I have gathered experts, a determined leader, a willing leader, a progressive leader is saying, I am here to work on this laptop that still has an OS problem.
Okay, the challenge here is that it's clearly the supply side doesn't work in this environment, right? You can have all the nice, shiny toys. It doesn't work. I still go back to my underlying premise. Your challenge, sorry? It doesn't work because you said some people don't even know. Yeah, some people, yeah, so you're throwing money at shiny new toys, okay? And they're there, supply side economics, right? Okay, what you need to do is for all of us to start figuring out how effectively we can create demand, an effective demand to say this is what we want to do and this is why we want to do this. The challenge I have when you discuss Nigerian problem is cognitive. We're always talking about the what and the why. What is wrong with Nigeria, why, but nobody ever talks about the how. The how requires slightly more intense understanding of the complexities of Nigeria. It's a whole new way of thinking. It's not critical thinking. The technical word is ratiocination. I studied philosophy, so pardon me. Check out the meaning of the word ratiocination. It means a particular type of thinking, not just your generic, oh, we're going to do critical thinking. No, you have to stand back and look at this Nigeria problem. So the supply side clearly doesn't work. So back to the question. You have a laptop, it works because it has a nicely designed, God-given design, but the OS is wrong. So the question is, how do I hack the OS? And that's the challenge. Like I said, Africa is sometimes a country, other times
it's a continent.
It's a continent. We share the same problems. Okay, so how do you hack the OS? I took a stab at this many years ago, about 10, 15 years ago. And I think Yemi was also part of that. You know, the 2007 election was particularly nasty in Nigeria. It was just blatant. So I kept asking myself, why? I mean, what happened? If they rigged the election, how did they rig the election? I had to deconstruct the processes. So there was a project we did under the auspices of Wangonet, which, by the way, was the first tech hub in sub-Saharan Africa 25 years ago. And what we discovered was there was something fundamentally wrong with the data of INEC. And how did we hack the system? How did we hack the OS of... I had a bunch of very bright young people from University of Lagos, University of Ife, and we all worked together to hack, literally, the OS of INEC. Don't ask me how they did it, but we came up with some very interesting findings. If you're really interested in the nub of that story, it was carried out by, just Google ghost polling stations in Nigeria, Reuters. It gives you the background of that story. But when I talk about it in terms of a hack, it was literally a hack. We discovered that the 120,000 polling stations did not really exist. We found out that 120,000, and the reason why was psychology, not the technology. My own curiosity about it, I was wondering, why is it 120,000 polling stations? Why is it not 112,574? It just occurred to me that that number was just too neat for a place as wide and as complex as Nigeria. And that's what set my mind just thinking that there must be something wrong with these numbers. So it came out that we discovered, again, I urge you guys to read the story. It's there, I think it was published in 2009 or 2010, Reuters, ghost polling stations in Nigeria, right? Then we discovered that there were not actually 120,000. There were actually about 30,000 less than that. 30,000 less than that. And one of the examples was that if you interrogate the database, there was a particularly egregious one, Eredo Primary School. It'll pop out Eredo Primary School, but there are about 30 references to Edo primary schools, spelled different ways. Eredo primary SH, Eredo primary SHOOL. So variations of it. So at first blush, you look at it, and it prompted a response from INEC, because it was clear, based on our own data forensics, that, and that's how they rigged the elections. Basically, they had a float of about 30,000 polling stations that they could, and beyond that, it was just, we forced INEC to upgrade to 120,000. That was an example of how you hack the OS.
Fantastic. Thank you. Please, let me come back to you, Engineer Shash, because